I noticed I'm looking at my son's homework, and I'm really, I have a fire under me right now. I'm really looking for my options on homeschooling because I noticed that they took a simple math problem that was like, let's say you have maybe 23 plus 23. So you have them, they're on top of each other. There's a plus sign to the left and a little line down the bottom. So they're telling him to take the tens row and add that up and put it to the side and then do something else with the ones. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is so simple. You just put the answer right beneath it. And it took me a long time to get him to think in that way, to make it more simple for him, because they taught him something complicated for a simple problem.
Right.
So that's what made me say, okay, they're trying to dumb these children down in school, and it really made me scared. So I'm like, I started teaching him, how to do the problem. I had him going into 100,000, with the answer and carrying the one over and, just continuously carrying over so that he would get what I was trying to show him, and he's got it now. But still, I'm sure there's plenty other things going on that, I have to, that I'm not aware of right now, too. But anyway, back to what I was saying. As far as what they're doing, in the schools with these children and, ushering in this homosexual agenda, I wanted to get what you have to say about that.
Well, number one, we have to recognize, as the late, great scholar, warrior, and Pan-Africanist historian John Henry Clark said, that your enemy is not going to educate you into how to take power away from him. So in school districts where black children dominate, they will never, ever receive an appropriate education because their education is left in the hands of the mothers of the children they're going to be competing with in society. It doesn't make any sense. Let's say you're on a Olympic volleyball team for the United States, and you're going to be playing Team Russia in the 2012 Olympics for the volleyball championship. So you have U.S. ladies volleyball, Russia ladies volleyball. But the coach from Russia is responsible for the training of the U.S. volleyball team. And he is expected, or she is expected, to coach them so they can beat Russia. Why would the coach of Russia train the U.S. volleyball team to beat Russia? It makes no sense. But black people expect the parents of white boys and girls to teach black boys and girls how to not only compete with them for college acceptance and law school and med school and graduate school, and then compete with them for jobs in the society, especially in an economically challenging climate like the one in which we live, and actually take that job from their child. It makes no sense. Every race looks after their own children above and beyond the children of other races, except for black people. One of the biggest problems we have as a race is we got this thing called universal love. It is a non-discriminatory, emotional, well-wishing, and willing to do well for anybody walking the earth, no matter how bad they've treated us, and no matter how intent they are on getting rid of us. Black people have an unconditional love, and that unconditional love is killing us. It is that unconditional love that's responsible for Europeans coming in Africa, raping the continent blind, which they continue to do today. It's that unconditional love that is seeing the black churches being overrun with homosexuality. It's that unconditional love that allowed homosexuals and Jews to benefit more from the civil rights gains that Dr. King and others died for. It's that unconditional love that allows Orientals and Arabs to come into our neighborhood and set up corner stores and bleed us blind. Unconditional love. And what we fail to realize is that unconditional love is really a hatred. Listen to me closely. The unconditional love that we have for all of humanity is really a hatred for self. That's really what it is. How do I justify that? Because everybody has what Dr. Clark calls the essential selfishness of survival. ESS, the essential selfishness of survival, which I am saying is born from a common sense need to look out for your family, your community, your nation, and your race before you look out for any others. In other words, you're going to feed your mother before you feed mine. You're going to feed your infant before you feed my infant. Now, if you can split that food, so be it. But if you can't split that food, you're going to take care of yours first, because that is what families do. That is what parents do. That is what communities do. That's what everyone does except the black community. Anything we have is open for any outsider, including our enemies, to come in, use it, take over, and exploit it. And unfortunately, because of that unconditional love, our children are catching hell, because that unconditional love allows us to let white people miseducate our sons, put them on psychotropic medication, throw them in special education, see that they get arrested, see that they're incarcerated, and then ultimately they are exterminated through homicide or suicide. It's a shame that we do not scrutinize the people who we allow to be in our children's lives. And because we fail to scrutinize, they are able to abuse, neglect, and mistreat black children because black parents fail to realize that white supremacy is real and that racism is the order of the day. And as long as we allow a predominantly white female teacher base miseducate a predominantly black male so-called at-risk population, we'll never be able to fix this problem. What natural interest does a white female have in the successful education of a black boy? Can you think of something?
Hell
I
no.
can't think of one natural interest that a white woman has in a black boy. She has none. She's not a stakeholder at all. And that's why she has no trouble saying he needs Ritalin or Adderall or Cycler or Prozac or Depakote. She don't care. She has no problem suspending him. She has no problem sending him to a discipline program. She has no problem expelling him from school. She doesn't care if he gets arrested. She don't care. He's not her child. And if it was up to her, all black people would be sent back to Africa anyway. So why are we so surprised that only 1 out of every 4 black boys is getting a high school diploma?
Right.
See, the school system is guilty of miseducation. But the black community is guilty of neglect, sister. See, whenever we lay responsibility on white folk for something we could have did ourselves, right after we blame them for being the chief architect of the problem, we then in turn have to do what? Blame ourselves for being the chief accomplice of the problem. They committed the crime, but we are guilty of neglect. Because had we not neglected our God-given responsibility, they would have never been able to commit the crime. You see that? So when we point the one finger at the white man, there's 4 more fingers pointing back at us.